Number 5, Bigfoot. It feels a little strange trying to say anything about Bigfoot because, he's like the most easily recognizable and cited cryptid in North America and maybe all over the world. I find it very interesting how many cultures across the globe have a variation on a giant bipedal ape-like creature. There's the yeti of the Himalayas, the Australians have the yowie, and I'm pretty sure about a dozen others. It's a very ancient cryptid, with its origins being difficult to trace back. It's one of our oldest stories as a people, actually. Some of the earliest stories ever come from indigenous tribes telling these stories of giant, hairy, bipedal creatures that would live in the forest. If you've ever wondered where the name Sasquatch comes from, it's an Anglicization of Sasquatch, a shape-shifting creature originating from the Sitsails people of Vancouver, described as being a giant ape-like creature that could take the shape of different creatures. Which I guess would kind of explain how the thing is so good at hiding if it's always turning into something else when we're trying to get footage of it. Now, the term Bigfoot came about sometime in the 1950s. Jerry Crew was a lumberjack working in Humboldt County when he discovered a set of large 16-inch footprints sunk deep within the mud of the Six Rivers forest where he was working at the time. He told his coworkers about this odd occurrence, with many of them claiming that they'd seen similar tracks on previous sites, reporting too of various things they couldn't explain, like a 450-pound oil drum going missing in the middle of the night. You know how often that happens, you look one way and then your 450-pound drum is gone. The men gave a name to this mystery creature that they perceived was harassing them and called it Bigfoot on, well, account of the big feet. Sometimes the origin is exactly what you think it's going to be. From here, once a local paper picked it up, the story of Bigfoot spread across the country, referencing this mystery creature leaving tracks in California. It was this, combined with the famous footage in 1972, that cemented Bigfoot as a cryptid with staying power. Now, I'm referring to the Patterson-Gimlin film, named after the filmmakers. You've definitely seen it if you're interested in cryptids at all. It's less than 50 seconds, and it's some of the most famous cryptid footage of all time. It's a very short clip. Everyone recognizes that classic Bigfoot walk. To date, it's never been officially debunked, and the men who recorded the capture went to their graves insisting there was no hoax present. Now, the existence of Bigfoot is still hotly debated, and honestly probably will be forever unless we ever get some concrete proof, unless Bigfoot ever comes out and holds a press conference. Wherever he is or wherever they are, I hope Sasquatches, Yetis, Yowies, Big Feet, I hope they're chillin'. Probably annoying dealing with paparazzi all the time, and you know what? Let them live in peace. If they want to come to us, they'll come to us. And while you're waiting for that Bigfoot press conference to happen, if you're looking for more cryptid content, Top 5 Scary is the place to be. We've got all of that and then some. If cryptids aren't your jam, we got aliens, conspiracies, true crime, fake crime, basically anything scary under the sun and above it. So stay subscribed, don't miss a single scream, but do that after this video, okay? Wait till the credits. Alright, moving on. Number 4, Thunderbird. Our next critter is going to be the Thunderbird. Nope, nothing to do with the sick classic car, although it's a mean ride. The Thunderbird is a creature that appears across many cultures, mostly indigenous groups alongside the Pacific Coast and Great Lakes area, all telling similar stories of these enormous, larger-than-life birds of prey. Now, these vary anywhere from stories of, just like a really big bird that would be scary, or sometimes Thunderbirds are more mythical, capable of impressive powers like thunder striking when they flap their wings, which is why they're called Thunderbird. Thunderbird, Bigfoot, sometimes the name of a cryptid really informs what they do. Tribes would tell stories about Thunderbirds to explain natural occurrences like storms or changes in weather or drought, famine, all those things. It's much easier to blame your problems on a big bird than anything else. Now, although they were thought to be dangerous, Thunderbirds were also seen as a benevolent nature spirit, and they would assist the tribe sometimes in searching of food during periods of famine. So they're not all bad, it's a Thunderbird to Thunderbird case basis. Now, it wouldn't be a good cryptid list unless we had a few sightings instead of just stories. So, we're going to talk about one incident in particular with the Thunderbird, the 1977 Lawndale incident. This occurred when a young boy, one Marlon Lowe, was playing outside when he was attacked by 2 large birds, one of which allegedly began to carry the boy away, until the boy's mother ran to his rescue. Eyewitnesses who'd seen the incident taking place claimed the birds were 4.5 feet long with a wingspan of 10 feet, which is pretty incredible. A 6-inch hooked bill, 3 sharp claws, and a large black body, not really resembling any local birds. So what was it? Thunderbird coming coming down to soup up prey, real life Pokemon, sounds a bit like a starling. Also a big shout out to that kid's mom. Imagine that power dynamic. Anytime he's acting up, you can remind him of the time you saved him from getting eaten by a giant bird. Oh, that'll get him mowing the lawn for sure. Number 3, Akora kamui. One of my favorite genres of cryptid or mythical creature is just a regular animal, but big. I mean, that's what the Thunderbird was. Maybe that's evident because the last 2 creatures that I spoke of on this list was a big ape and a big bird, respectively. Can we keep that trend going? Of course. Now, this list has been a little North American centric so far, so our next entry is going to be the Akora kamui, a Japanese cryptid that is basically just a giant octopus. They don't all have to have powers, they don't all have to be complicated, sometimes you can summarize them just like that. It's sort of like the Japanese equivalent to the Kraken, the other really big name in the giant octopi scene. The Akora kamui is a giant octopus god that is said to reside in Hokkaido's Uchira Bay. It's said to be big enough to swallow a ship whole. Its crimson body turns the sky and water red when it swims through. Old fishermen used to tell stories that when the seas or skies would turn red, that meant the Akora kamui was there and you should just avoid that general area. The fishing's gonna be no good. You're gonna get eaten by a giant octopus. Now, the origin of this legend is the best part of this cryptid. He's got some great lore. The legends state that near the mountains near the village of Rebungi, there lived a gigantic spider by the name of Yaushika. His gigantic red body stretched over the mountains. One day, he descended, he was feeling frisky, and attacked the people in the village of Rebungi. He shook the earth as he walked, destroying everything in his path. Now, the villagers were terrified of him because he's a giant spider, and prayed to their gods to save him. The god of the sea, Repun Kami, heard the prayers and pulled the giant spider into the sea, where its body was contorted and twisted into the shape of the Akora kamui, the monstrous octopus. Started as a spider, ended as an octopus. That's an icky way to live. That guy's just always been icky. Number 2, bunyip. Coming in at the number 2 spot for today is going to be the bunyip, which from the name alone, you might be forgiven for thinking it sounds kind of cute. You know, you close your eyes, bunyip. That almost sounds like it's wanting to be an adorable little rabbit Pokemon or something. If only. Also, there's a lot of Pokemon references in this video. I got it on the brain, clearly. Gotta catch them all. I think I'm just sad because Ash and Pikachu retired. Anyway, the bunyip is a creature from Aboriginal Australian folklore. Its name literally means devil or evil spirit, translated from the Wemba Wemba language. The bunyip is an aquatic predator with many varying descriptions. Sometimes it's described as kind of looking like a hippo. Sometimes it looks like a cross between like a cat dog, and sometimes it's just an incomprehensible, scary, snake-like twisty monster thing. All that's common across all of these depictions is that it's a scary thing that lives in the water. Over the years, there have been a number of reported sightings or findings of mysterious bones in southern Australia that led early settlers and colonists to believe that the bunyip was a new creature out waiting to be discovered. It inhabits swamps, rivers, and lakes, lurking for prey. Now, the first recorded sighting of it by Australian settlers can be traced back to 1851, when a tracing of the creature's body was discovered near a riverbank in Ararat, Victoria. Local hunters had speared an unknown beast and made an imprint of the creature's body to remember it by, because, you know, if you found something weird, you'd want to remember it. They described it as 11 paces long and 4 paces wide in an extreme depth. Now, sadly, this outline no longer exists. They didn't use permanent marker, but it was enough to spur an interest and a hunt for this possibly mythical, possibly real creature. The bunyip seems like it could have been a real strange step in aquatic evolution. Could not even begin to guess what it was really, or whatever it was they had found that day, so probably just safe for us to assume that it was a cryptid and there could be more bunyip out there lurking and waiting. And number 1, Ogopogo. Coming in at the number 1 spot is going to be a local favorite of ours, Canada's very own Ogopogo. Yes, I'm a little biased. I had to include a local cryptid at the end of this one. Much like Bigfoot, almost every culture's folklore includes some variant of a sea monster. The most famous among them is probably the Loch Ness Monster, the fabled plesiosaur that lives deep beneath Loch Ness in Scotland. Ogopogo is kind of like the Canadian version of that. Ogopogo chills up in Kelowna, British Columbia, and is tied deeply to the native folklore surrounding this area. The Okanagan natives revered a creature they called the Nataika, or Nahatik, which translates to a few things, but all come out meaning roughly the same thing, you know? Water demon, water god, sacred creature of the water. If you're not getting this across, important thing that's wet. Nataika was a demanding lake god, and it was thought that in order to ensure safe passage, locals would have to sacrifice a small animal, a pig, a chicken, and others, into the lake to appease the hungry lake monster. The threat of a lake monster dragging victims to the bottom really kept people in line. Now, it should be worth noting that there is some good evidence evidence and a bit of pushback from native groups to suggest that the demonic view of the lake spirit actually came from European settlers, and that to the Okanagan people, the Nahatiko was a fairly benign spirit that actually protected the valley and was kind of a cool guy. Now, all those names, where does it eventually become Ogopogo? The rather silly sounding name sounds more like it's a toy. Well, a children's song from the 1930s was the first place to ever refer to this sea creature as Ogopogo, describing it in the lyrics as, his mother was an earwig, father was a whale, a little bit of head, hardly in a tail, and Ogopogo was his name. That's as much singing as you're ever getting out of me. Over the years, much like Nessie, there have been numerous possible sightings of Ogopogo seeing something strange in the water that can't always be easily explained. Many people believe that Ogopogo could be like an otter or a seal or something that's always getting misattributed, but the legend is very much alive. Ogopogo has become a bit of a mascot for the city of Kelowna, with the statue of it serving as a popular photo op for tourists. So please, if you're ever in the area, snap a pic with Ogopogo. He loves it, he loves the press, and you don't even have to sacrifice a chicken to him anymore.
Number 5. Bigfoot. Bigfoot is perhaps the most famous cryptid this side of the Loch Ness Monster. He is found in the forests of North America and is often described as a bipedal, large, muscular, ape-like creature who is covered in dark red, brown, or black hair. Sightings of these incredible creatures have been reported for centuries, with variations of this creature appearing in several indigenous tales and legends, and reports of Spanish explorers claiming to see some circling their camp in the 16th century. Ever since then, sightings of the creature have been a consistent but often unprovable sight, with only ever grainy footage and blurry photographs being presented as evidence. Some people believe that these sightings can be explained as bears that have been mistaken for other creatures, or even escaped apes from zoos who have taken up residence in the forests. Of course, there are also a fair amount of hoax sightings where it turns out to be a man in a costume trying to get attention or sell their fraudulent photos. But is there really a secret species in the forests of North America? With so many sightings that can't be explained, it's hard to not at least keep an open mind.
Next up, we have the Loveland Frog. Hailing from Loveland, Ohio, this massive-sized creature is said to resemble a humanoid frog, walking on 2 legs and standing at just over 4 feet tall. So I say massive, but I'm talking massive by frog standards here. What's great about this particular cryptid is that there have been multiple spotted at once. The very first sighting happened back in 1955, where a man spotted what he described as 3 short humanoid creatures with frog-like faces under a bridge. One of them also had a bar-like wand device that emitted sparks, leaving a scent of alfalfa and almonds. What an oddly specific smell to describe. There weren't any other reported sightings of this creature for another 17 years, but these 2 sightings happened in a span of just 2 weeks and were both reported by police officers. I always get more interested in cryptid or paranormal accounts when police officers report on it. It's not like it's, Chuck from the hardware store being like, yeah, I saw a frog man. Sure, cops have lied. Yeah, I think we all know that. But making a report about spotting a frog monster in the middle of the road is, it's an odd thing for a cop to lie about. Anyway, the second sighting happened on March 3rd, 1972, where Officer Ray Shockeye, what a name there, eh? Ray Shockeye, spotted a 4-foot-tall humanoid creature with leathery skin and a froggish face, which he saw hop over a guardrail into the Little Miami River. The second sighting happened 2 weeks later, where an officer named Mark Matthews, boring name, spotted what he thought was the same creature before firing at it and missing. This is said to be a false version of the report, with the official one being that he did hit the creature only to discover that it was a large iguana and not a mutated frog monster, but that seems far less likely to me. I smell a cover-up. It needs to be solved. Later on in the month, a local farmer also claimed to have seen the elusive creature, so there you go. So look, I'm a total frog freak. I love the little hoppy guys, and I, for one, much hope that this thing exists, and I think it does. If I ever find myself a trip to Ohio, I'm driving straight to Loveland, where I'm just gonna scour every pond there is with a giant net, and I'm gonna catch him.
Number 3. Mothman. The next cryptid is said to have spent his time around West Virginia in the mid to late 60s, scaring locals and possibly even predicting local tragedies before they happened. In November of 1966, two grave diggers were practicing their trade in a cemetery in Clendenin, West Virginia. It was a dark and stormy night, but these men had worked in a graveyard for many years and were not easily spooked, or so they thought. When they looked up into one of the trees, they saw a strange man-like figure perched in its branches watching them. He had glowing red eyes and gigantic 10-foot wings, and even after the initial shock wore off of the gravediggers, they reported feeling an intense sense of dread and foreboding due to his presence. A few days later, two young couples were making a day trip in their car near Point Pleasant. While they were driving near a former military munitions site, a figure matching the description given by the gravediggers swooped down from the sky and started to chase the vehicle. As sightings of the creature continued to come in over the next year, the creature was dubbed the Mothman by the local papers. Some of the locals believed that the Mothman was living in a vacant nuclear power plant outside of Point Pleasant and was possibly the escaped product of some kind of accident or secret government experiment. The dread-inducing encounters and sightings suddenly came to a stop in December 1967 when the Silver Bridge, which carried US Route 35 over the Ohio River, suddenly collapsed due to a faulty suspension wire and the weight of rush hour traffic. 46 people lost their lives in the tragic accident, and the Mothman suddenly disappeared. This led to theories that the Mothman showed up before disasters as a horrifying omen of approaching doom, with similar creatures being reported in other places before disasters, such as in Chernobyl prior to the famous disaster there. Is this creature really an omen of approaching doom? Or is there some other explanation for this terrifying and dreadful apparition that terrorized the inhabitants of the Point Pleasant area in West Virginia?
There is said to be a strange creature stalking the swamplands of Lee County, South Carolina, that being a big 7-foot-tall lizard man. On the 14th of July, 1988, sheriffs of Lee County were called to inspect damage done to a vehicle parked outside a home right next to the scape or swamp. The vehicle had large tooth marks and scratches on it. Once the story hit the news, a teenage boy by the name of Christopher Davis came out to make his own report to the police, saying that just 2 weeks prior, his car had been damaged, only he had actually seen the person, or rather the thing, that was responsible. Yes, it was our titular lizard man. Christopher described the creature to be a massive, 7-foot-tall creature with 3 fingers per hand, red eyes, and green, wet, scaly skin. He had been driving home from work one night when he got a flat tire. When he got out of his car to fix it, he saw the creature making his way towards him. Abruptly got in his car and started driving off, but the creature was so fast that it caught up to him, driving at 64 kilometers an hour. That's about 40 miles per hour for the Americans in the audience. And Lizard Man is now on the roof of his car, scratching at it. Christopher quickly hit the brakes, causing the monster to fly off his vehicle before finally making his escape. When news of this report hit the papers, it caused a frenzy. Lizard Man was the talk of the town. More and more reports started coming in. The local radio station offered a $1 million reward to whoever could catch the beast, so hunters started flocking to town to try and catch it. Stores in the area began selling Lizard Man t-shirts. It was Lizard Mania! And local sheriffs began writing off the supposed encounters as bear sightings, because if there are two things that look eerily similar, it's definitely a furry bear and a big green scaly lizard monster with red eyes and no hair to speak of. A bear? That's the best they could come up with? I'm not buying it.
Number 1. The North American house hippo. Our next cryptid is one that every school child in Canada has heard of and has spent many a sleepless night worrying that they will cross paths with. These strange and frightening creatures bring an aura of terror that cannot ever be truly understood by people in a foreign country. However, I will try to help you understand what it is we are dealing with. Imagine, if you will, it's nighttime, in a kitchen just like yours. All is quiet, or is it? The North American house hippo is found throughout Canada and the eastern United States. House hippos are very timid creatures and are rarely seen, but they will defend their territory if provoked. They come out at night to search for food, water, and materials for their nests. The favorite foods of the house hippo are chips, raisins, and crumbs from peanut butter on toast. They build their nests in bedroom closets, using lost mittens, dryer lint, and bits of string. The nests have to be very soft and warm. House hippos sleep for about 16 hours a day. House hippos are extremely hard to spot. They enjoy admiring their reflections, hoarding socks, helping themselves to your devices, and annoying your pets. They're small creatures, only about the size of a hamster, and chances are most Canadians have one living in their household and don't even know it. House hippos are extremely intelligent, which is why they are rarely, if ever, found caught in mousetraps or other devices meant to capture typical household vermin. The house hippo is so rarely seen that many people believe that the creature is simply an elaborate hoax. But the rare person to encounter these creatures will never forget the sounds they make before charging and attempting to bite off one of your toes. Just how many house hippos are out there, and where did they come from? We may never know for certain.
Number 5, the Honey Island Swamp Monster. Now our first entry is going to take us down to Louisiana, deep in the bayou, where all manner of sinister creatures are said to call their home. And there's a number of cryptids that live deep in the swamps. We got the Rougarou, the Night Folk, and the Honey Island Swamp Monster, beasts that got my attention right now. The Honey Island Swamp Monster is kind of like a Cajun cousin to Bigfoot. He's described as a gigantic bipedal furry monster resembling a hybrid of ape and man. The creature's been sighted and described dozens of times over through the years, but its initial sightings take us all the way back to the 1960s. This first documented report of Old Honey, as he sometimes likes to be called, comes from an air traffic controller who in his spare time took up wildlife photography, and his favorite spot to snap pictures was in, yep, you guessed it, Honey Island up in eastern Louisiana. After his passing, when relatives were going through his belongings, they found a series of photos and reels of Super 8 film that were thought to contain this creature. Now he claimed that in his time photographing Honey Island Swamp, he had discovered trails of footprints of these giant feet that showed only 4 toes, and near these untraceable mystery prints were the bodies of boars who had been ravaged beyond recognition. Now normally I would just say that's probably just the night folk doing what night folk do best, but this definitely sounds like the work of a vicious cryptid. Now interestingly, there are some cryptozoologists out there who cast a little doubt on the Honey Island Swamp Monster. Not that they don't think he's real, mind you, but that they think he's a different cryptid called the Rougarou, which I mentioned all the way back 30 seconds ago if you remember that. Another Cajun cryptid that I love so much I couldn't resist sneaking it into this video like he didn't want to pay for a ticket. It's top 6 scary cryptids now. Can't stop me when I'm filming, I make the rules. The Rougarou is described to be similar to a werewolf. It's a giant wolf man who lives in the swamps, but he hunts those who disobey the rules of Lent, which is surprisingly a lot more pious than most werewolves are. Could both of these creatures be out there in the swamps having a little monster mash out there? And if you're looking for way more cryptid content, we have got loads of that on Top 5 Scary and then some. Cryptid's not your jam? We got conspiracies, UFO sightings, stories too good to be true, and stories too true to be good. Click through, stay screaming, stay subscribed, but stay watching this video because we worked hard on it, okay? Moving on.
Number 4, Ogopogo. One of the most common types of cryptid is the lake monster. There's of course Nessie, the Loch Ness Monster, Champ, the lake monster from Lake Champlain, and Ishi, the Japanese lake monster. But for my pick, I'm going to be talking about the legendary creature who is said to reside in the depth of the Lake Okanagan in the Canadian province of British Columbia. It is known as the Ogopogo. This creature is closely tied with native myths, which told of a creature that they called Na'atik, which translated to the water god or water demon. They believed that the creature demanded a sacrifice in exchange for safe passage across the lake. Because of this, the First Nations of the area would sacrifice small animals before entering the water. Stories tell of a visiting chief who refused to offer up a sacrifice as he did not believe in the creature, and as a result, when he and his family tried to cross the lake in their canoe, the creature used his long tail to whip up the surface of the lake and suck the canoe and its occupants down to the bottom of the lake. Ogopogo is often described as being a serpent-like creature, about 50 feet in length, with smooth, dark skin, who moves through the water at incredible speeds by coiling its body in vertical undulations and propelling itself forward with its powerful tail. Every year, there are reports from people claiming to see Ogopogo traveling across the Okanagan, with the usual grainy footage and blurry photos being given as proof of the creature's existence. In the 1980s, a cash reward was offered by a local tourism agency if anyone could prove the beast was real. After harsh words from Greenpeace, they were forced to clarify clarify that the proof must be videotaped, and that if found, the monster was not to be captured. The Ogopogo is officially listed as an endangered species, and is therefore protected from hunters. In one of the creature's most famous sightings, he was seen by 50 tourists who watched the Ogopogo for 45 minutes from the shore of a local beach, with one tourist being able to capture 10 seconds of 8mm film featuring the monster. Skeptics say that the sightings of the creature are usually groups of otters that are mistaken for one long creature rather than the several animals swimming together in a row. But regardless of the origin of this cryptid, or whether he is real or not, the Ogopogo has become a beloved tourist draw for the area, with the city of Kelowna, BC even having a statue of the creature as both a nod to local legend and a place for tourists to take their photo with the mythical creature.
Number 3. El Chupacabra. Since the 1970s, livestock farmers have said its name with a careful whisper, hushed tones under their breath. Is this creature even real, or is it just another tall tale that's gotten out of hand? The Chupacabra is a cryptid notorious across Latin America and the southwestern United States. Its name literally translates to goat sucker, which is hilarious, in reference to its vampiric feeding habits. Now, depending on who is telling the stories and where, interestingly enough, the Chupacabra's appearance varies fairly wildly. In Spanish-speaking countries like Puerto Rico, the Chupacabra is depicted as very alien in appearance. It's very reptilian, has like little bug eyes, and has spines running down its arm and its back. Now, alternatively, and this is the depiction I suspect more of you probably know it as this is the more North American southwestern version of it, the classic Chupacabra, if you'd like, is depicting it as a feral, canid-like creature, looking like a mutant dog, usually with missing chunks of fur, angry snarls, looks something more like out of Resident Evil than it would be an alien. I think it's very funny that these are the two speeds of Chupacabra. You have alien or weird dog. There's a small section of the cryptozoology community who suspect that these two might actually be two entirely different cryptids altogether, and we're conflating them, complicating matters ever so slightly, but you know, that's an argument for the cryptid subreddit. A lot of politics there, that's all I'll say. The first origins of the critter can be traced back to the 70s in Puerto Rico, when a string of mysterious, extremely violent livestock deaths were all happening around the country with no explanation for what had happened. These animals, primarily goats and sheep, would be found drained bone dry of their bodily fluids. That's why it's called the goat sucker. There are some experts who believe it's possible that the Chupacabra could be sightings of a thought extinct species called the thylacine, and that's probably not how you pronounce that. I could have looked it up. Known more formally to his friends as the Tasmanian tiger, it's a weird little critter that doesn't quite look like a cat, doesn't quite look like a dog, and is kind of somewhere in the middle. Very cute, but it's thought to be extinct, with its last remains being officially found in 2022. There are some skeptics and experts out there who wonder if perhaps this real-life mythical beast could be what people have seen when they see the Chupacabra. So what do you think, my delightful little comment section? Is the fabled Chupacabra really out there terrorizing the lives of goats, or would you have to be a sucker to believe that?
Oh, because he sucks goats.
Yeah, that's what you gotta get down on the car ride home. Number 2, the Goat Man of Maryland. Maryland is a beautiful state that a lot of important people over the years have called home. Frederick Douglass, Harriet Tubman, Babe Ruth, and if you believe the folklore, the Maryland Goat Man. I've talked about the Maryland Goat Man a few times on this channel, and I'm very likely to talk about him a few more times because he's a cryptid who just can't be bleat. Like beat, because he's a goat.
Oh!
I'll see myself out. No, there's more of me. The Goat Man is a villain straight out of a direct-to-DVD horror movie. Said to resemble a satyr, this Chronicles of Narnia extra haunts the woods of Maryland, hatchet in hand, ready to attack anyone who dares disturb its territory. Like any good cryptid, there's some variations depending on who's telling the story of what he looks like. Sometimes he's more humanoid with a human face and a furry body, whereas sometimes it's outright monstrous with a goat's head and bipedal, looking like something out of a Greek myth. I greatly prefer the latter. The Goat Man has been a popular urban legend for a while now, with the earliest sightings and stories going all the way back to the 70s, when dogs around the area of Bowie, Maryland, were going missing at an alarming rate. Whispers came out about a malicious goat man who was stalking the woods, taking your pets as his prey, and these rumors caught on like wildfire, and the character became a very popular campfire story. You know, you'd see graffiti sprayed on the walls saying things like, Goat Man was here, or Goat Man is watching, remind you to behave. Now, Goat Man's possible backstories are far far too good to include. It's half the reason I have such a fondness for this cryptid. Depending on what Marylander you're talking to, you might hear that the Goat Man is a complete mystery. Just a strange goat demon who's bad to the bone. Or, if you want a way more colorful backstory like I know you do, then the Goat Man is the product of a mysterious mad scientist's experiment to... I don't know really. Do something with goats? Very possible this could be a Jeff Goldblum fly situation, somebody merged with a goat. Anyway, he escapes from the lab and he wreaks havoc on humanity and is said to mostly haunt Lover's Lane and go after teenagers in parked cars. I way prefer the backstory where he's a lab experiment and he's like a furry Jason Voorhees going after people smooching. Goat Man, we absolutely love you. If you are watching, please feel free to reach out, DM Top 5 Scary. We would love to have you on the channel to do a collab. You can share your side of things.
Number 1. Man-Bear-Pig. This next creature has been described as the most super serial threat to our planet. You see, there is something out there which threatens our very existence and may be the end to the human race as we know it. I'm talking, of course, about Man-Bear-Pig. It is a creature which roams the earth alone. It is half man, half bear, and half pig. Some people say that Man-Bear-Pig isn't real. Well, I'm here to tell you now. Man-Bear-Pig is very real, and he most certainly exists. I'm serial. Man-Bear-Pig doesn't care who you are or what you've done. Man-Bear-Pig simply wants to get you. I'm super serial. He is said to be a demon from hell that thrives on temptation and is known for making deals with societies, giving them nice cars and premium-style ice cream, and then repaying the debt by unleashing unspeakable horrors and carnage upon the next generation. This deal was made by generations who knew the cost that the deal would have on their ancestors, but they were not expecting to live long enough to see the consequences of their actions. Man-Bear-Pig was recently responsible for a lethal series of attacks in Colorado, but despite the brutality in front of them, many locals still refused to believe that such a creature could exist. There is a rumor that a new deal was offered by the demon, where the town could stave off annihilation if they could give up soy sauce and Red Dead Redemption 2. Of course, the town refused such an unfair offer, cause plain rice, ugh. They instead renegotiated the deal with Man-Bear-Pig so that he would simply return in 5 years and unleash his fury 1,000-fold. How long do we have before Man-Bear-Pig returns? And is there anything we can do to stop him? If only we had taken Al Gore more serial.
Number 5. The Loveland Frog. First up on our list is the Loveland Frog, a cryptid that was new to me but is very quickly winning my heart, and maybe he'll steal yours as well. The Loveland Frog Man is a mythic humanoid frog that is a legend to the people of Loveland, Ohio, which is where the name comes from. The Frog Man is described as a 4-foot bipedal frog, mostly appearing to hide around bodies of water. I mean, it's a frog. Where else is it gonna go? It was first sighted in 1955 by a businessman driving home alone at night. He was headed out towards Branch Hill in Ohio when he saw 3 strange, short, squat, bizarre-looking creatures standing on their hind legs alongside the road. He described them all as being 3 to 4 feet tall with leathery-looking skin and faces just like a frog with giant glowing yellow eyes. The Frogman would go quiet for a bit and wouldn't be seen again until 1972 when a local police officer was driving home and saw an unidentified 4-foot creature running in front of his car's headlights. When he got a good look at it, the officer described it as a leather-skinned bipedal animal crouching like a frog, and it hurriedly ran towards a river. 2 weeks after that sighting, another Loveland police officer reported seeing the same creature, the same little bipedal frog monster. This officer, however, shot at the Frogman and discovered that what he found was a tailless iguana that had grown unusually large. Now, while for some, that was the end of the Frogman legend, there are still sightings and reports to this day. As recent as 2016, people are still claiming that they see the Loveland Frogman. To the people of Loveland, the Frogman is something of a local hero. They love the guy, and I gotta be honest, I sincerely do too. There's something about this cryptid story that's really doing it for me. There's no stories about him eating anybody, the Loveland Frog monster is not attacking anybody, he's just a happy little frog guy scurrying across the roads. I sincerely hope they're out there. And hey, you having fun on the channel? Drop a subscribe for new scary videos every single day, twice a day. Let's keep on going. Number 4. The Fresno Nightcrawlers. Up next is the Fresno Nightcrawlers, and let me just say right now, these are probably my favorite cryptid on the entire list. If I say another one is, I'm lying. It's these guys. Some cryptids are downright terrifying. Some cryptids will keep you up all night, and maybe these guys will too, but I personally find them downright adorable. These are the Fresno nightcrawlers, bizarre, rail-thin bipedal creatures with no discernible features whatsoever. The only footage we have of them is blurry security camera footage, which doesn't help identify the creatures much at all. They appear short with very, very long legs, almost stilt-like. The first reported sighting of one of the nightcrawlers came from a city in California, Fresno, where the name comes from. A man named Jose was at home late at night with his dog trying to get a good night's sleep, but was repeatedly disturbed by his dog barking at something out the window. He went over to quiet his dogs down and noticed something deeply bizarre on his security camera. He saw a pair of white, elongated creatures strolling down his lawn. The next morning he claims to have seen small footprints all over the lawn. The next sighting of the Nightwalkers was in Carmel, also in California. A former Marine and his wife were driving up a hill, and they claimed that they saw a 7-foot tall creature that they described as a thin, pale, armless white humanoid walking on by. What are the Nightwalkers? They're weirding me out. Are they aliens? Cryptid? Possessed pair of pants? If anyone's got a line, you let us know immediately. Whatever the Nightwalkers are, all I know is that I love them. I think they are downright adorable. I watched the clip of them walking down the hill like 30 times while I was writing this script, so just know that. Number 3, Skinwalkers. Now let's shift to one that's not adorable even a little bit. Skinwalkers are an extremely popular cryptid, a person with the ability to shapeshift into any creature they desire. Sometimes the legends state that in order to shapeshift, they need to molt out of their skin, and in some legends, they have to wear the pelt of the animal they intend to shapeshift into. You know, sometimes skinwalkers are presented as monstrous, sometimes humanoid. The recurring lines through every skinwalker stories, though, is that they are absolutely terrifying, and under no circumstances should you ever look one in the eyes, as it's said that looking one in the eyes will not only draw its attention, but seal your fate. So take a listen to this story from Reddit. This post came to us from a Reddit thread asking, what was the scariest thing that has ever happened to you? And an anonymous Redditor shared this story, and it's probably one of the scariest things I've ever read. Beginning. I was a kid when this happened. My uncle and I were finishing up gathering firewood from my grandmother because it was getting dark. We were driving back on a dirt road, and I had this awful sense of being watched. Before I could turn to look out my window, my uncle shouted, "Don't." My heart felt like it was gonna beat out of my chest, and I heard a tap on the window. My uncle sped up and started praying in our native language. I didn't know what was going on, and I thought it was over until our truck dipped from the bed. My uncle then started saying, "Look at me and don't turn away," over and over. And then I heard it again, tapping from the window behind me. It was getting harder for me to breathe, and I wanted to cry. A minute or two passed, and the truck dipped. My uncle looked at me and said, "We'll ask your father to do a prayer in the morning so that the evil will forget our faces." Naturally, other people on Reddit were kind of terrified about that story since it's sending a chill down my spine, and they asked him what he thought it was, and the Redditor said simply that he thought it was possibly a skinwalker. What more is there to say? Number 2, the Flatwood Monster. The Flatwood Monster is another West Virginia native, and I've gotta ask, why are there so many cryptid stories coming out of West Virginia? I've never been there, so maybe somebody can clear this up, because all I know about West Virginia is anything John Denver sang about, and he didn't mention Mothman or the Flatwood Monster, but that's a whole different story. Anyway, the Flatwood Monster is a cryptid that's been thought to be an extraterrestrial in nature. It was reported to be 10 feet tall and roughly 4 feet wide. It's described as wearing some sort of mechanical suit like it's Darth Vader rather than a purely organical being, and its most notable feature is its giant bulbous head with 2 gigantic eyes glowing green. It's got a big cowl in the shape of a spade behind it that makes it look a bit like it's an alien vampire, and its body was thick, armored, and it has small, spindly little arms like a T-Rex. Now, the Flatwood Monster's first sighting dates all the way back to 1952, when 3 local boys saw a shining light falling across the sky, eventually hitting the ground nearby at a local farm. The boys returned home to report that they'd seen a UFO crash land and told one of their moms to get a search party going, and honestly, that is exactly what I would do if I ever saw an alien. I would probably still call my mom, to be honest, if I ever saw an alien. From there, they gathered a small search party to go to the farm to approach what they saw. When they reached the top of the hill, they saw a large pulsating ball of fire and smelled a mist that was making their eyes burn. Someone in the search party noticed 2 small lights and flashed his light quickly at them, revealing a creature standing 10 feet tall with glowing green eyes. The creature hissed at them, then glid upwards and head off into the night. What was the Flatwood Monster? Some Skeptics have speculated that those eyes could have been that of a barn owl, and the face does kind of light up. The shadow was disguising it, so it would make sense. But that begs to ask, what was the mist? And what was the thing that fell from the sky? Was the Flatwood Monster an alien? And is it just me, or is the Flatwood Monster just the tiniest bit adorable as well? I know it's kind of terrifying, and its bug eyes are gonna haunt my dreams, but does anyone else think it looks a little huggable? Shaped like a friend? Number 1. Mothman. Mothman is arguably one of the most famous cryptids of all time, and it's captured our heart since he started flapping around in popularity. Mothman's first ever recorded sighting was in 1966 in West Virginia, when 5 men were in a cemetery prepping for a funeral when they saw something bizarre rustling around in the trees nearby, and lifting off was a massive brown-winged creature that disappeared into the night, far too large and unwieldy to be a bird. From there, the legend of the Mothman began to rise. It would get spotted frequently throughout West Virginia and the surrounding states, but its home is West Virginia. 3 days later, after the first sighting of the Mothman, on November 5th, 1966, another sighting occurred. Roger and Linda Scarberry were driving with their friends, another couple, Steve and Mary Millette, around midnight. While driving, the couples noticed that amidst the darkness there were glowing eyes that seemed to be hovering around them. They stalled the car a bit, unnerved about who these mysterious eyes could have belonged to, and through the darkness and the headlights of the car, they saw a creature that stood 7 feet tall with leathery wings folded against its back. The creature began to pursue them rapidly, matching the speed of the car at around 100 miles an hour. They tried to turn around to get a better look at the thing, but the creature screeched and flew upwards into the sky when it was hit by its headlights. Now this would be far from the last sighting of the Mothman. Since these early sightings, Mothman has been reported hundreds of times across West Virginia. He's practically a pillar of the community. I think he's allowed to vote. Some say he's a benevolent figure who wants to help people and warn them of dangers around, whereas others say that he's a more mysterious, nefarious agent, flying around sending people to their doom. There's an allegation that Mothman was involved in the destruction of a bridge in 1967 that led to the death of 40 people. Some survivors claim that they saw the Mothman flying around overhead after the collapse. Whether he's real, a West Virginian legend, a friend or a foe, there's no denying that like a moth to a flame, we're drawn to the story of the Mothman.